get into that into the run. But yeah, so we're gonna start with Bowser, Charizard, Didi, and timer starts on the selection of the 4th character. So, and we're gonna start on go. So in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so this is Midair Stadium. This is the first stage that we would be doing in any percent, or really any new game run. We just start here just because menuing purposes. So the reason I picked Bowser first is because I could do that side B off the stage, and it would let me go right into being Charizard instead of having to SD and lose a lot of time for it. And I'm Charizard because, one, it makes this fight go by a lot faster. He's pretty good with this fight. Second, is because there's a boss fight at the end of this fight, and Charizard is easily the best for boss fights in the game because of a little thing called Rock Smash. And it does a crazy amount of damage, and it has like super armor, and it's just really, really good. So that is why we're going to have Charizard right now. There's some characters that are a lot more useful in New Game Plus than there are in like any percent or something like that. But the basic trend of New Game Plus is finding the best Pokemon for each stage. Best character for each stage, and doing the stage as fast as possible. Okay. And we just killed Zelda's cage just because it's right when we start off, so just easier that way. So the reason this category is so much faster is because, one, we don't have to watch all the cutscenes that go like inside the stages or outside of them or whatever, but also we don't have to do any of the Great Maze. So timing ends at the once we kill Taboo, and Taboo's at the end of the Great Maze. But there's no Great Maze. The Great Maze is already completed because this is on a completed file. So. Okay. Alright, let's actually use an RNG. Getting a Mega Mushroom is pretty good with basically any kind of running movement just because of obvious reasons right here. Alright. So now I'm gonna show off a pretty broken gimmick in this game, which was gliding. Meta Knight and Pear are the only two that can do it. I'm just gonna pay attention for a second. So what gliding is, it's basically just kind of like an extra jump for characters that have wings. Make sure. And Pit and Meta Knight are the only two that can do it, but they both have different kind of aspects of how they can use it. So for instance, that stage, Pit is a lot more efficient than Meta Knight is. That's why we use them there. And also, with New Game Plus, we get to have Sonic, which will be used somewhat often. We do use him in a few stages, but he's not as great as you would expect him to be, even though he's like really, really fast. His fighting and his aerial mobility is really not that great. So that's where his like downfalls are. But even with those hindrances, he's still pretty useful in these kinds of speedruns, or in this run. Sorry. So using his side B is a lot better to use whenever I have to go horizontally, and I'm in the air, just because again his air mobility is really, really not great. I'm just gonna keep going through the stages, and the stage order that I go in is basically just like optimal in terms of ooh, oh god, optimal in terms of like just menuing is basically what I try to base it off of. Is just when if I tilt the joystick down 1 or something like that, which stage is gonna be next, and that's basically how I do the menuing. So right here we're gonna be able to see probably like the most, for me, most like irritating aspect of Subspace is the CPU fights. It's just, that went really well, but there's so much RNG that can go into it, and like they can react a certain way. It's just so, it can be really difficult to deal with sometimes, but that went pretty well. Pretty good, actually. Okay. So I only need a Meta Knight for that fight, just because he's really good with killing quickly, especially when there's like a wall like that. So I've jumped onto this platform just to start the side scroller, and then I would spawn with Yoshi. Could have been a little bit better this time. Alright. So but the beginning of this run is pretty basic. Like, it's just, you know, there's some character differences between the stages from any percent in this category. And a few more stages from now, we're gonna see a lot more differences between any percent and New Game Plus, other than just characters. So in any percent, you're able to change the difficulty, but in order to do that, you have to enter a stage, exit the stage, and then re-enter Subspace. Like, you have to exit the entire game mode and then re-enter it just to change the difficulty, and if you need to change it back, you have to exit, enter again, all that stuff. In this category, since it's already on a completed file, we can change the difficulty whenever we enter each stage. So we're going to use that to our advantage sometimes, because in difficulties, it is harder to kill enemies sometimes, but also it makes side scrollers go by faster, and also like adds some enemies sometimes or something like that. But we are going to be using the aspect of it making side scrollers faster to our advantage, and do that to a few stages. The reason it's not faster for this fight or for this stage is because there's so much more fighting than there is side scrollers. It's just not really worth the possible time loss that we could get. And also, for whatever reason, the stage doesn't really speed up that much more even on intense difficulty, so it's just not worth it in the end. Okay. Back up. And if you're familiar with the any percent route, I'm actually using the character I would be using in 8%, because in some stages it's just faster to use the character that you're normally using. In 80% you would be using Yoshi at this time, and we're going to see the same thing in a few other stages. Not too many though. Weird. decided to kind of float away for a little bit. But we're good. So for a good example for like why we're not using Sonic in this stage, the whole beginning of this stage is just running horizontally, which obviously would be like Sonic's go-to. But even near the end of the movement part of the stage, he just starts lacking in the skill that we need. So what I did when I was doing a lot of routing at the beginning, like early ages of this category, was just kind of getting the characters with the fastest walking speed or running speed, and then going down the line and seeing who was best with certain stages. Fox is really good with this stage just because of how, one, he's one of the fast characters in the game, obviously, and two, he's just really good with getting down to those boxes, and he's also really good with fights. And the whole last of this stage is just fights, so even though Sonic would maybe be a little bit faster than him in the beginning with his running speed, it wouldn't and be worth it just because of his fighting abilities isn't as strong as Fox's or other characters. Oh, he jumped. Alright. And this is another stage of this is the exact character that we'd be using in any percent. I've tried really hard to make the stage like different. In terms of like, the characters we'd be using, because there is a fight that you can skip at the end of this stage, but just overall, Yoshi is still faster throughout the rest of the stage, even with the fight, so we just stick with Yoshi here. Oh, that kind of... Another way you could kind of go about routing this category is getting the harder stages out of the way first, because the menuing really isn't like that time consuming anyway. I just like optimizing it, I guess. Then we're gonna do I think it's a funny looking gimmick. Just kind of throw them off. It counts as a death. Oh, okay. Alrighty. Alright, so here is the first example of a lot of differences in the categories. So normally we'd be able to kind of pick in any percent we'd have Marth and Meta Knight, and it's a lot easier to kind of use the different character selection screens to our advantage to be able to do fight skips and stuff like that, because there's a bunch of fight skips in this stage. But since it's New Game Plus and we only have our 4 stocks, you have to be a little bit more careful with them. So we're gonna use Yoshi for this whole beginning, and then we're going to SD at the end of the fight, so that we're Meta Knight for the rest of the stage. But if I mess up any of the fight skips at all and I die with Meta Knight, then I can't use Meta Knight for the rest of the stage, and then I can't do any more fight skips. So it's pretty, either I get them or I don't. There's no getting a second chance or a second stock. So definitely have to be more precise when I'm doing this run. Oh, that sucks. SDing. I'm going to Meta Knight. I'm going to just pay attention real quick and then I'll try explaining what I'm doing. What just happened right there is something I couldn't really control. Kind of just... So what I was supposed to be doing here was I need one of those primates to follow me all the way to a certain spot over here. It's a little past here. And whenever I would kill him, it would stop that fight. Just got one fight skip. Get this one. But I need him to follow me, which it's RNG what he does, honestly. I can kind of manipulate what he does, but it's still RNG in the end. And did not decide to continue to follow me, so kind of sucks, but it's okay. So now that I don't have Meta Knight, I wasn't able to continue the rest of that stage, which is a little disappointing. But there's a big fight at the end of this, at the end of the entire stage after this room, and that's where like the big time save is. So that's a little disappointing. We're just going to go through the rest of this. Basically how we would normally do in any percent or something. But yeah, if I was Meta Knight, so what I would have normally done was just jump on top of the green box that was like right before that fight, and then do use his glide mechanics to just fly over the fight trigger. So for Koopas, for whatever reason, they're just like really annoying, honestly. Probably my least favorite enemy out of all of them. Usually, if you don't kill them in one shot, they like respawn, and you have to kill them again, and it's just really irritating. So luckily, I was able to kind of get that done quite quickly, but. Didn't die. Dying there is definitely not good. Just because Mario is who we have on deck, because you don't usually, unless like it calls it for the route, like if I have like a certain fight after or something like that, I don't usually pick who is second. I just care about who's my first pick, and then just kind of mash for the rest of it. Oh, okay. Alright. So, tripping is a very interesting mechanic in subspace, at least. Obviously, no one likes tripping, but they actually changed a lot of the physics and stuff like that with Brawl for Subspace Emissary specifically. So like they made someone's running speed a little bit faster or someone's running speed a little bit slower, just so that it could be a little bit more balanced overall in Subspace, which is actually kind of cool. Not what I mean. Alright. So, and they also like they did everything. There's jump speed, like everything, which I actually forgot I was going with that, but yeah, they did do that. But yeah, dying in that stage would definitely have been quite difficult to deal with, just because how much slower Mario is than Sonic. And that stage is basically all running. The fights are pretty basic. So the reason I do this on Intense is because there's a little side scroller near the end of the stage, and the reason I'm Pit instead of like someone a little bit different, honestly, is just there's a fight skip coming up over here. That's quite interesting, actually. It's a lot. It's definitely a really funny looking one. Get it. We're supposed to do the fight right over here. And then there's just an invisible ground that we're running on right here. So that's cool. Alright. And then doing on Intense is what is speeding this part up. And the reason I picked Snake as my second character is because I'm not gonna have Pit. I'm not gonna do it with Pit. I'm just gonna SD during the side-scrolling part, and I'm gonna beat Snake just because it's a lot more powerful than Pit is. Do more damage to him quicker. But in the fight, that is. And the only thing different about this stage from any percent is that in the beginning, in any percent, you're supposed to be Snake. But we don't need to pick Snake, so we're just gonna be Meta Knight the entire time. Because it's literally just Snake for 30 seconds and then Meta Knight. But we're just gonna be Meta Knight the entire time because it's faster. So we have to kill these 3 portals and these rooms over here. Oops. Because usually I kill the flows along with Neutral Orb, but that did not happen, but it's fine. But we have to kill these 3 portals, and then there's little floors that are covering a ladder, and we press the button and then it opens up the ladder. Is the reasoning for why we have to do all that. Oh, that's item RNG. Item RNG can be quite irritating to deal with sometimes. Just spawns where you don't want it to spawn. Actually, cool little new strat that we found recently for killing these enemies. You have to kill a bunch of these enemies to open up those blue doors down there. If you can kill that Primate at the right angle, then you can hit it up to that Spirit one, but you're able to hit him through the wall instead of having to go all the way around and attack him head on, which is quite useful. Then we just have our normal Peach and Zelda, Shadow Peach and Zelda fight. And that's what I was referring to with the weird RNG. It just was not working with me right there, and I did not want to die. Alright. So, now I get to show off Charizard's power against boss fights. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, this is basically what we do with all the boss fights. We want to have Charizard for as many boss fights as we can. Oh. The hitbox is very weird. Sometimes it doesn't hit you and sometimes it does. Whenever they're like rolling back or something like that. But yeah, it makes for an under 50-second segment right there. This stage would sometimes actually give me a lot of trouble, just because if you mess up those those double jump cancels with his neutral B and you accidentally hit side B or something, he just dies, and the wind can also kind of mess with you a little bit. gotta be careful there. Oh, my second jump. Okay. So cool thing about Yoshi is that he has a super armor on his second jump. Right there, kind of ate my second jump for some reason, but that's fine. But we usually use that for like damage boosting or something like that through attacks or through enemies. Kind of using it, but usually. A little bit backtracking, but we're good. So here's right there. I picked Kirby specifically because I need to have him for a CPU fight that is going to be at the very end of the stage. And Fox is actually like a pretty new add to this stage. I used to kind of just do it with Meta Knight. But one, his fight with Rayquaza really isn't that bad. Like obviously that went pretty well. And plus the fight relies on RNG a lot anyway. Because of like just the pattern that he can use. But also his running speed is really good, and he's the character that you would normally use in any percent, and he does a perfectly good job, so I kind of just went back and just started doing it with Fox more, and it saved more time, so. There's some stages that just seems like they were made for certain characters. And the stage seems like it was made for Fox. It kind of was, technically. Because this is when they introduced Fox in Subspace. Now we gotta hit this button. The reason we have to hit this button is because if we don't hit the button, the red door up there is just like a room of fire and we can't get anywhere. Which is why I had to go do that fight with the Goombas. And then I can get into... so whenever there is an enemy that you're killing, and obviously it dies, it'll like kind of bounce around the walls or something like that, like what that Toto just did or what that Goomba just did. And depending on what direction that it goes into, it'll despawn a lot faster. So whenever it hits something with hitbox, just like that, when that paratroopa hit the other paratroopa, it instantly vanished because it hit something with its own hitbox. I'm not too sure why it does that, but it does. So whenever I'm killing certain things, especially something like stuff that's simple like that Toto, you want to kill it and fast enough so that the door spawns, because that door won't spawn until the Toto fully disappears. So that's why I did the forward smash to the Toto, because it hits the first wall and then the second wall and instantly disappears, and it's a lot quicker than doing like another up smash or something like that, or having it like diagonally bounce off walls or something. That's another thing I look into whenever I'm doing this run is if there's an item that drops that has its own hitbox, I like to hit enemies into it or throw it at other enemies so that I can despawn them quicker so that more enemies can spawn and or so the fight can end sooner. And I SD'd with Fox because the fight's coming up soon. I'm totally not controlling that. That's literally just the cannon. I don't know why they did that. Okay. Pretty simple stuff right there. And you can use King Dedede or Kirby, honestly. They both work the same, so. Alright, so here is our first example of doing it on different difficulty. And this is a pretty difficult one. I'm gonna kind of try and stay a little quiet, but we're doing it on intense, which is the hardest difficulty. So. Okay. So, for intense, the enemies just attack a lot harder, they're a lot faster, everything is just literally intensified, and it's crazy. And right there, those carpet enemies are just so fast. Even if I do an attack sometimes, it just doesn't register fast enough. And I do like to be Meta Knight for this part, but it's not necessary. Hopefully I can do it. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, we actually got the fight skip still, which is good. That's the main reason why I want Meta Knight, and we still got with Pit. So that's still good. But this stage is pretty difficult, and the reason we do it on intense is because it's just so much side-scrolling. I don't mind dying right there. At that point, it doesn't matter. The side-scroller started. I'm not losing time. And I don't really need to worry about being anything else right now. But yeah, the side-scroller goes so much faster on intense. It's pretty crazy. Well, obviously, he just did one hit, did 36 damage. Pretty crazy. Also, these cannons move so much faster. Alright. Whoops. Alright, so we're gonna do this on very hard, weirdly enough. Okay. Because intense is just the obviously it not only like I said, it doesn't just affect the speed of the side scroller or like how hard the enemies hit. Also, it just makes it a lot harder to kill them in general. And there are a few fights in this stage, so doing it on intense is just a little bit too risky and too difficult to pull off for it to really save enough time. But just doing it on very hard is just a little bit, it's just doable. just doable. I just have to be very careful at this side-scroller part because it is very easy for me to die still. And I'm Charizard now because I have to do a boss fight right at the end of the side-scroller. And the side-scroller usually takes around, I want to say like 2 minutes or something like that on like easy difficulty. And if like I can do everything correctly, it should be at most like 2 minutes, maybe like 5 seconds at the end of the boss fight. So it's pretty crazy how much time it can save with the difficulty changes on some stages. Oh, that's bad RNG. Okay. I somehow was able to somewhat survive that. That's fine. So I actually kind of want to die before this fight ends with Charizard because I want to be Meta Knight for the movement part of it. So it's actually somewhat perfect. RNG wasn't really there for the moveset that he used, but ooh, okay. Yeah, so we're just gonna use Meta Knight's glide physics to really just kind of get out of the stage as soon as possible. And this item right down here is a good example of an item with a hitbox. So if I can have him hit it, it'll just instantly despawn. And it was actually pretty useful right there. Oop, okay. I wasn't sure if another one was gonna spawn or not. Alright, so there's a fight right over here that we're just gonna fly right over. And get into the door. Alright, so I'm gonna go Yoshi, Pit. This is another stage that we're using Intense on to our advantage. Alright. And the intensity really like affects this stage for whatever reason. It seems like it kind of affects certain stages more than the others. Okay. And I literally was just Yoshi for that first part. I want to be Pit for the rest of it. I definitely do not want to die. We'll clutch, but we're good. Ooh, okay. Sometimes he can get caught up in that. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's unfortunate. I've actually never had something like that happen. Usually they get caught up in the elevator, but they don't usually follow you. But in that case, they did. So. Okay. So I'm supposed to skip this fight, but actually not sure if I can do it with Lucas. So. Definitely gonna be a little bit of a hindrance right now. Also, the wind blows like a lot harder on intense difficulty, so this is also rough for that reason. And that's why you just really gotta be careful with these intense difficulties. It's crazy. Because we lost quite a bit of time just because we didn't get the fight skip on top of, you know, just... Okay. Alright. And this is a newer strategy that I actually picked up today. Oh, rip. Okay, we're fine. I think. Okay. Oh, that's not good. Okay. So usually, if I were to have gotten that, you kind of just literally glide over this entire section. But my angle was a little too high, or a little too upward. But it's okay. And we also just skipped a fight doing that as well, so that was cool. And at any percent we would normally be using Lucas, so... That's a fun little momentum abuse in this game. The momentum that you get backwards from doing the PK fire and then doing the side magnet just pushes you in the opposite direction. It's pretty great. And normally we would be Meta Knight and we would just kind of fight Wario, but since we're Lucas, we can use a pretty janky strategy for this fight. And then here's another example of Charizard being Charizard. And by the way, we were like super out of order of like what normally any percent would be doing. Pretty funny. So there's a pretty tight cycle that's right at the beginning of this stage. That it's either if I get it at save time, if I don't get it, then I lose time. So see if I can get it. It's pretty tight. So. So I can barely fit through that, through this little hole over here, but okay. I should not have gone for that. That's fine. It only really matters if I'm Yoshi for like this stage, and it was basically almost over. So. He's also useful for like the fights that happen, but Kirby's also pretty useful for it. So, not a big hindrance. Despite Kirby like as I guess like used in general for single player or whatever. Or multiplayer. Kirby's actually pretty useful in Subspace. That's a weird thing for Subspace, is a lot of characters that are not necessarily the best in terms of tier list, they're really useful in Subspace. Like Yoshi, Kirby, Lucas are a few that come to mind that are pretty useful, that aren't exactly that well, don't perform that well, I guess, in multiplayer and competitive, which is also pretty cool. And then there are some that are really good in competitive that aren't good at all in Subspace, and that's like ZSS is pretty bad, Zeus Samus, Olimar is pretty bad, Diddy Kong is pretty bad. So it's interesting indeed. Another example of someone who's like bad, or like at least tier list wise, that's good in Subspace is Captain Falcon is also pretty good. But again, they also neutralize some things that might make a certain character good or bad. So, but for the most part, it's usually because they just have something in their arsenal that's just really useful for stages that they're in or something like that. So now we just have a bunch of fights to do. Oops, that's the bottom box. I don't know how that didn't hit me. But we're good, I guess. And the reason I did on normal was just because it makes the side scorer just a little bit faster, and it's really not much different in terms of doing the fights, so... Oh, goodness, okay. I guess we're good. We're lucky with the Armite setting itself on fire. I'm just gonna press these buttons and get through the switch. If we're underneath where the door would close, like when the door closes, because they close after a certain amount of time, and each difficulty they close like sooner, so you have less time to get to the door. If you're under the door, you get squashed, and it's great. Alright then. Alright, I see you, game. Okay, that's a new one. Okay. That is definitely a new one. So Charizard tries to be a little slick with his flamethrower, but I'm not having that. We're just going to be using Meta Knight's very good aerial game to our advantage in this stage for sure. That was a whole bunch of shenanigans right there. But it wasn't that slow. I'll give it that. So usually right here we would be using like in the ruins, we entered the door and then exited just to save a little bit of time in the side scroller. But one, we're on normal, so it's a little bit faster. Two, I don't want to have too much damage because, again, we don't have the luxury of being able to switch out in the middle of the stage with like cutscenes and stuff like that. So I keep my percentages the longer I go through the stage, and I don't want to have that much percent going into this fight because this fight can be very, very bad. It can go very bad, very, very quick, and definitely don't need that. I need to be Meta Knight for the stage for it to really save time. So, be a little cautious doing this last little bit of movement up into it, and then hopefully the fight goes swimmingly. Wait a little bit, and go into the door off screen. Not bad. Not bad at all. One would say that was quite fast. But that fight can go crazy wrong, like so quick. You can just do the craziest options and just really mess up your world. But we got pretty lucky right there. Everywhere. Yeah, Meta Knight's pretty great with the stage. Okay. Alright. Enough of that. that item can be really bad for me sometimes. And this is the prime example of Koopas, they just respawn. You don't kill them instantly. Like a bunch of them respawned right there just because I didn't kill them the way the game wanted me to, which is annoying, but... And also that item was a little trolly just because the bullet bill actually like made it go spiky, so that's why it was hitting me. Alright. What are we in there? Like swimwear. That's a pretty straightforward stage. We use the same character we use in any %. Captain Falcon is very useful in this stage particularly, and also Subspace. Fast, hard hitting. Like my dating profile. Anyway. Yeah, just basic movement here. Oh, that was interesting. Alrighty. I was really wanting to dash and get that, but not see. Oh, there we go. Ah! Oh my gosh. Oh no, that didn't hit me. Oh, another one. Oh, okay. Well, that was good RNG, but like, I didn't use it to my fullest extent. Pikachu here. Alright. So after this stage, we're gonna get another wave of like really interesting, different ways of going about our stages. It kind of died down a little bit for after our first wave, and now gonna pick back up. It's gonna be even more difficult. Using whenever on Pikachu, I want to kind of use his up B to my advantage with my movement at least. It can be very useful and very fast if I can do it correctly. I don't want to use it everywhere because I'm not too proficient in his up B, but I like to use it where I can, especially if there's like ledges or something like that, where I'm going to have to be jumping anyway. Getting that angle to hit him. If I don't get him with the hitbox, he'll actually just attack me and then I'll lose time. Now we get a cute little Pikachu section. We're just gonna do our fight as the game intended us to. No, I've definitely tried. The reason we do all this is because all this stuff that just fell from the sky basically was in a different room that we are able to access, but we can't get past these walls. And I've tried so hard just to like find ways to get through them, but you just can't. It makes me sad. Pretty simple stage right here. Pikachu is who we usually use in any percent, so pretty muscle memory, basic stuff. Oop. Okay, so we are going to use Pikachu, Manite, Pit, Charizard. We're actually going to use all 4 of the characters that we picked right now, which is why I paused just a second just to remember who I needed. But yeah, we're going to use all 4 of them, at least in some capacity. I really like the stage in New Game Plus. It's a lot. The stage is a lot. Even for any percent, it's a really fun stage, but it's just a lot that can happen, a lot that can go wrong. So. But this beginning right here is pretty basic stuff. We're gonna do it like we normally do, and then I'll do the switcheroo somewhat quickly. Oh, dang. Sometimes they don't DI. Sometimes they do. Okay. Untterrible. Oop. Alright, so right here we're gonna SD. Because I want to be Meta Knight for this next part of the stage. Go up here. With Meta Knight, we just glide through an entire area. I'm going with Pit. SD with Pit. We're gonna be Charizard. Finish off this rooms. These last 2 rooms. Now we have a boss fight. So that is why we picked the characters that we picked. Okay. Not great. you go. So yeah, we do Pikachu just because Pikachu's really good with the fight, basically, or is like the main reason why we use Pikachu is for the Samus fight. Get this menu done real quick. And then Meta Knight is obviously, we got to glide through that entire area scotch-free, just easy peasy lemon squeezy. And then Pit made doing the, so what we did doing right there is we actually like went to the last stage that you go to normally if you're just to normally do that stage. Went to the last stage and then glided upwards to get to that warp just earlier, and it saves about like 20-25 seconds. And then once we were done with that, we just SD because we need to beat Charizard for that boss fight to make it a lot faster. And that's something, that's like one of my favorite parts about New Game Plus, is just being able to route out, like using more than one character in a certain stage. It's just really, really fun to me. Alright. So right here, you're going to attempt to skip the rest of the stage. And we did it successfully. Alright, so we just skipped over 3 fights. Pretty insane. Okay. Dang, that Primate's at peace. Not want to deal with it. Oh, okay. Guess the hitbox is right there. Oh. Oh, dang. Okay, that did not go very well. That's kind of like the deciding factor of that split, is how fast I can kill those guys. But everything else is pretty good, so. Alright, this is a very difficult stage. I'm gonna get back up just in case. Usually I'll just go Meta Knight Kirby or Meta Knight DDD, but I'm just gonna be very careful. I'm gonna just kind of concentrate for a second. Jumps. Alright, that was a little sketchy, but you're alive. Alright. Make sure I don't fall off of this. And it's usually not typical for me to survive. Ooh. Okay. To survive like fully with Meta Knight, and I don't usually. Just because there is a fight at the end of this, and using Kirby is a lot easier than using Meta Knight. To put it bluntly. But it's not a bad thing to use Meta Knight, but I'm probably going to go out if I don't die due to just, you know, being at 204%. I'll probably go out of my way just to be Kirby, just so that I can be safer about it. Alright. Just want to make sure I got all that. And also a good thing about using Kirby there is that even if they get out before they die, I can just footstool them. Okay, so we're gonna use you, and we're actually gonna use all 4 of these as well. This is a very intense stage. Oh, okay, that's weird. Okay. Usually I can just fly right over that, but angle is a little, I guess, too downward. Alright, that's fine. That's really all of Meta Knight's purpose, is basically just to fly over the whole beginning and just do that fight. I'm just gonna wait a little bit just so I don't spawn at a bad place. Oh, okay, I died too late because of the spikes. That's fine. Power shield these spikes. Okay. Pit is a very weird character indeed. His momentum is just so, I just don't really understand it, honestly. Ooh, that was almost close. So what I'm doing right here is I'm actually skipping a fight. There's a fight that triggers right on that platform. And I have to press all 3 of those buttons to get into this door, which is why I had to go up and then down to that ladder. I'm gonna do a risky strat right here. Usually I would just kind of stay with Pit and just kind of go on until I die, and then go to Captain Falcon. We're gonna do a little different this time. And so far, it did not pay off because I never not get that fight. So that was weird. But we're fine. Alright then. But the reason I did that is because I like to be Captain Falcon for this fight. And Pit's not terrible with it, but he's just not great with it either. That's bad. Okay. You know, thinking about it now, I am in a marathon. I probably should have done the safety strat, but, you know. So I'm gonna pick this up actually, just because I don't feel like dying, you know? Usually I wouldn't pick this item up in a fight. Ooh, that's dead. Yikes. Okay. That's unfortunate.
Continue.
Another thing that I kind of have to like rely on to get like a really good fight time is just good items. I wasn't really getting good items in that fight just then, so like getting food or getting Starman or something like that is really useful. So you can usually kill those earlier, but was not prepared. Alright, so here's another reason to why we went on hard difficulty. Was like the first one was the beginning side scroller, and then the whole like last end of this stage is partially side scroller, so saves quite a bit of time. Oh, we're doing it on easy. I'm actually supposed to. I need to be Charizard by the end of this, so I'm gonna. Since I game overed, it like defaulted back to Squirtle, so I'm gonna just. I usually SD a little bit later. Alright. And that's the longest split in the game. It's the longest and probably the most difficult, so. And this stage is supposed to be like kind of a gimmicky stage. Okay. He didn't get his. I don't know why he didn't jump, but he didn't jump. But the stage is supposed to be gimmicky. It's like, oh, you don't know which state or which room is the room you're supposed to go to. But if you just go all the way down the first elevator and up one on the second, you're where you're supposed to be going. So. This stage is really easy with Pip. You can literally just up B everywhere. The reason I did that is because I won't be DDD for this fight, and the fight's right at this door that's right above me. It's actually funny because DDD is, this is the fight in any percent DDD Bowser. So. Supposed to power shield that, but we're good. Okay. It was a little sloppy beginning, but we're good. Down there, everything. Go straight down into this fight. This Now I actually have to be careful during the side-scrolling part, because there are the little cloud enemies, Spox, and they can kill me, and I don't want to die. Dying's bad, especially in this stage. I need to run a night the entire time. Didn't want that item. And sometimes they're weird and they respawn like that, but that's okay. You got good luck and got a Mega Mushroom. Or Max Mushroom, whatever. I can't think of his name. Maximoto. A maximum tomato. Of the stage, and hopefully I can get this. This is a pretty tricky fight skip. See if we can get it. Yay, we got it. Alright. That's a pretty tight one, so. Usually, I would be kind of picking more than just Charizard, but I believe in myself. So, like usually I'll go like Charizard, Meta Knight, Yoshi, like Falcon, and then kind of just match whatever, or at least Charizard, Meta Knight. But I don't need to. But this is what the Great Maze is right now. It's literally just emptiness. We just have to go straight to Taboo. No Great Maze at all. We go to the quadrant that's closest to Taboo and just get to him as fast as we can. Okay, and then let's Taboo fight. So time is gonna be soon. We get the last hit of Taboo. I'll just say time when it's ready. That's actually really good RNG to get him to do that move right there. And to get him to do that time. Sorry, I was not expecting that. But yeah, time. Okay then. And that is Super Smash Bros. Brawl Subspace Emissary New Game Plus. Quite the dramatic ending, I know, but yeah, that is indeed the speeds runs. Yeah, this category is definitely a lot different than any percent. I think it's a little bit easier to get into than 8% just because it's easier to practice, and it's shorter. It's definitely a fun speedrun. I enjoy the differences between 80% and New Game Plus, and like being able to use different characters and all this other stuff. It's definitely fun to watch, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry I didn't get to couldn't get world record that time, but you know, my kind of made a little bit of a 2 a.m. tired plan and didn't work out very well. So. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I don't remember what's next, but I'm sure it's wonderful, and I think you should all watch it and donate money and be amazing people. So, yeah. I think I'm outie, so...
Alright. So see how